Good afternoon. You're listening to WCEG Network, where we speak life into the community, Empowerment Group, where we speak life in the community. Log into WCEGTalkRadio.com. Watch us live on your smart television, Roku, cable channel, your YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now Fanbase and Blue Sky. Search for WCEG and subscribe to all media outlets. My name is Damita Chatman. I am your host for the next hour. Download our free WCEG mobile on Lexus Play. And we have 12 podcasts. Last but least, this is the disclaimer. The Whatever is said today on the show, it is the host and the guest and not the producer. First, I want to thank my guest for taking a last minute. I called him the last minute. I say the last minute. I think it was like 1:30. Thank you, because Miss Dr. Steele had an emergency, so we're gonna push his um, show back until the 24th of March. So I want to thank Mr. Richard Rose for coming. But we was going to plan a show with Richard Rose anyway, so we're going to go on and do his show today. I like to be personally with him because he's my friend and I know him. So I'm going to call him Richard. If he want me to call him Mr. Rose, I'll call him that. But I'm gonna call him Richard because we have a personal relationship and we're doing the same thing. Thank you for taking my call, Richard. I want you to give them a little about your background. And before we go in today, I'm going to tell you now, we are not going to hold back. Uh, this is the problem that I see that's going on. People is torn around, and we are not really getting down uh, what's the problem and talk about the issues and the problems. We can do it without being disrespectful, but we got to get down. And I think, and I know Richard is ready for it. Come on, Mr. Rose. See, there I go. I'm gonna call you Mr. Rose. Come on, Mr. Rose.
Listen, I appreciate the invitation to come on. I've been doing civil rights stuff for a long time. My first picket line, I was 13. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, uh, which was like the first escape route for Black folk who were leaving Mississippi. They had to get to Tennessee first, to Memphis first, and then many of them went further north, including relatives of mine.
Uh-huh.
So I worked with and been mentored by some of the great strategists. James Bevel was a cousin of mine who was an organizer of SCLC with Dr. King and Abernathy and Lowry. And his Diane Nash, who was once married to him, was she was a coordinator of the Freedom Riders out of Nashville, Tennessee. So, and of course, I worked with Hosea William Hill and Joe Boone once I came to Atlanta. But it's where we are now is not much different. I think the difference when I started, we were just trying to get to public accommodations and some employment. So now I call it a backlash against Black people. And I believe what we should do is have our own blacklash to go back to 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 first of all do what I call selective consumerism, and that is do business with our friends and our community first, and to walk away from those businesses and those industries who continue to discriminate against Black and brown people, particularly Black people. There's nobody in the history of the world that has had to endure what America has done to Africans for 400 years. And so we have to remember that. I think many of us have forgotten how bad it has been, how bad it was. And I don't know how you could do that. And you live in Georgia, which is home of the largest shrine of white supremacy in the history of the world. Nobody has done what Georgia has done to demonstrate and to proclaim and reinforce racism. No other state in this country. I think Georgia leads the nation in racism. And so it demonstrated in November the 5th, American white voters sent us a message. They sent us a message that racism trumps even dishonesty, even untruthfulness, even uh, uh, acquiescing to our enemy, Russia. Uh, it trumps economic downturn that we had under Trump and the denial that he did with COVID uh, that cost thousands of lives across America. So even that, none of that Trump racism. And it's time for us to get together and
Let,
go to work.
let me ask you something, Richard. What I'm hearing from different. Well, I'm going to say this. I'm hearing from a selective few of our people, and they're praising Trump, the president. I'm because I have to respect the office. They're praising the president like he has done this great thing. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around how can you call people and tell folks they have lost their jobs, you have messed up their livelihood, and people are going along with this. Help me understand that, Richard.
Well, I can't help you understand it because I don't understand it at all. But what we know is that people tend to justify their decisions. And so if they've made a decision, they made a decision to vote for this president, and so they don't want they won't allow themselves to embrace that that was a mistake. They live, I think, in a state of denial. Uh, and people are uh, marvelously um, don't have they low information people. For example, you know that the federal government workforce is only about 4% of the budget. So, so the question is, how firing these people who provide services and that they are now finding out is going to save all these billions of dollars that they claim. It's just not true. It's absolutely not true. I mean, the fact checking on the claims of Elon Musk and his Doge crew uh, has already revealed numerous lies. I mean, for example, that was one amount he claimed 5 billion. Well, actually, it was 5 million, and even that was suspect.
Well,
So they'll be continue to exaggerate and create false narratives.
let me ask you a question, because I saw somewhere where somebody put on social media that they have found all this money. How are they finding all this money less than 30 days? And I'm just baffled. I'm just baffled. But the really thing that gets me, that people is falling for this. And do you believe when we voted in November 5th that the people thought that they were really going to send the minorities and the brown people back, but now it is affecting the other race?
Well, I think there's a combination. Again, nothing trumps racism in America. The prospect of either voting for this white man with a demonstrated bad history versus a black woman a brown woman who has had a lustrous career of advancement. They picked the white man. They picked the racist. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty clear now. They will try to justify it, but that's happened before. Clearly the American Civil War was fought in order that the southern states could maintain chattel slavery. They could keep black folk in bondage forever, perpetual. This man, his children, and so forth and so on. So, and they made up a reason to do that. And their claim is, well, the Civil War was fought over states' rights. Well, absolutely not. So that those narratives will be created to justify a bad, unpopular decision that they've already made. So you will continue to hear false claims uh, because it's all about a false narrative.
But let me ask you, looking at the stats, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but looking at the stats, probably about 1% just work for the federal government. And majority of the people that's working for the federal government is the napkins. And I'm gonna use that word. So do you think that America got bamboozled?
White America, because Black America understood what time it was. So white America I don't think they will, uh, I think they took a chance. I think they look at Kamala Harris as an absolute um, unqualified because of her race, and they picked the white man. Now, I think he's doing more than many of them understood that he might do, but that's life, you know. Clearly, what people didn't understand is that as many as 65% of federal DEI contracts don't go to Black people; they go to white women.
Right.
So I think that was a mistake, a miscalculation. But you know that's the way that's what happens when you rely on something other than integrity and character and you know for when you make decisions, and
Let,
it's a bad decision.
let me ask you this, Richard. I've talked to several Black Republicans, and when I ask the question, how do you think the president is doing? And they come back and say that he's doing a great job. And I come back and say, you tell me firing people on the drop of a dime, taking folks' stuff away, Medicaid, and doing all this. That's great. They say that's yes.
Well, again, they just defending their bad decision. They don't want to admit this is just so Trump's been in office what a month and 4 days,
Mm-hmm.
and so they don't want to admit that it was a bad mistake, that it was a mistake, and so they will justify it. That will continue to justify. You know, it justified. You know, they continue to paint the narrative Black folk were not smart enough, not educated enough, not skillful enough. And so to prove that, uh, you know, public schools were not open to Black people after the Civil War. The first Black public school, high school in Georgia was not open until 1924, which was Booker T. Washington High School right here in Atlanta,
Mm.
in the entire state of Georgia. So they had to create situations to prove their premise. The premise was we unqualified, and so they had to prove that premise, and it's never worked, but
So
they continue to do that.
let me ask you this. He just fired the 5-star general over. They just
Joint Chief of Staffs, yes.
Yeah, they just fired them. They find women. If you look at what they're doing, it looks more like it's a race card being played. We can call it what we want to call it, but it is what it is. Do you think it's a race card?
Well, of course, it's a race card, but in many respects, it's a red herring. So he does that to satisfy his base, but at the same time, I believe that he and Elon Musk are collaborating to basically to rape the U.S. Treasury, to steal money. Money will go to Trump and his family and to Elon Musk. I think this is the overall plan is to rape the Treasury and do all these other things to keep people talking about them and certain population who are racist to keep them excited about his actions. But the real objective is to steal the United States Treasury.
What I'm gonna tell you, you must was in my house last night because we had that conversation in my house, and believe it or not, the words that you said that we talked about that last night. Let me ask you this: it was over 89 million registered voters that did not vote. Did not vote.
I understand, and we have that, as voting democracy. I think is a full-time job, and we have to recognize that. Many people don't understand how their vote uh, impacts society, impacts themselves. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday. He said black college graduate claimed that before the election that Trump was quote gonna make us all rich. And I don't know how she got that, but we don't have an understanding of government. They don't teach civics anymore. They don't teach current events. And it's harder to teach current events now because there's less and less integrity in the press. There's so much of what they call news is not news, is propaganda.
Okay.
Fox being the leading propagandist
Do you
network.
do you think it's time out for, and I'm going to say this and I don't want nobody to get offended, but do you think it's time out for folks to stop playing and get down to business? And that goes starting with the home first, the churches in the community, and stand up for what's right, because we got 4 years of this and we ain't even in the 2 months yet. So could you
Right.
imagine what's going to be happening in the next 3 months?
Well, I think we need to fight back. As I said, we need to have a black.
Yeah.
For example, I think that we should eliminate all of those European traditions that we have adopted. For example, St. Valentine's Day. That was, what does St. Valentine's Day really have anything to do with our lives?
That's
You
right.
know, and so we need the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus. I mean, all these, you know, I knew as a kid, 5, 6 or 7 years old, there was no Santa Claus because I no white man came down my street in Memphis, Tennessee. So we need to stop that and develop our own communities and focus on our own communities and not try to emulate theirs so that they can treat us okay. They are not going to treat us okay.
Right. And you just said something. I believe, this the saint, I'm gonna use Valentine's because it just passed. I think it's overrated. Years ago I told my husband, just stop buying it for me, because uh if you can't tell me you love me every day and give me my flowers when I, you know, and it boosts the economy. I went to one store a week before Valentine's, and I thought I was in a store, and the balloons and the flowers and the hearts, they took over the grocery store. And them folks was spending that like it was nothing.
I agree with you. I don't know why. Uh,
Same as Halloween.
yeah, Halloween as well. Halloween, Valentine's Day, um, and Mother's Day. What was special for my mother is being with her on the holidays and her birthday. Until she died, that's what I focus on. Nobody had to tell me to appreciate my mother. I didn't need
Absolutely.
that. And so, again, it's time for us to execute a backlash against all of these traditions that the retail community has enforced upon us. The retail community, they benefit. We don't benefit from it, and
Mm-mm.
we should stop participating.
Oh, I agree. Let me ask you a question. Do you think, and they had already said it because it was in Project 2025, And you got folks that's on Section 8 in these houses. They believe that the president is not going to do anything to them. Do you think it's in Project 25? Do you think he coming after that too?
And come out of Section 8, I wouldn't put anything past him. I'm in a position where I'm not focusing on what he will do next because I expect the worst.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm focusing on is what we can do in our communities to overcome what he does and to send a message that we refuse to be mistreated. Silence gives consent. So we can't be silent because that means we are okay with whatever goes on, good, bad, or indifferent. We need to express ourselves.
Right. Now let me ask you this, and you don't have to answer it, but I'm gonna answer this question. Do you think that black politicians, I'm just gonna say black politicians, because the the Napians have showed us what they gonna do. Do you believe some elected officials have sold out the black communities?
This is what I believe, and I wouldn't put it like that. Oppression, there are two objectives to oppression. One is deprivation, take away your resources, deprive the oppressor, the oppressor class has deprived the oppressed or the oppressed class of economic opportunity and resources. That's deprivation. The second is degradation, where the oppressed, the members of the oppressors work to convince members of the oppressed class that they are not good enough. And that's what we've experienced. Even saying, for example, my first commitment to civil rights when I was 9 years old. I had the summer before that school, that summer, my mother, we went to on a road trip from Memphis to Cleveland to Detroit to Philadelphia to New York, where her siblings lived. And so we went to different things. We went to the beach in Lake Erie. We went to Rockefeller Center, the Liberty Bell, and Statue of Liberty. And when we came back, I asked my mother, based on a weekly reader report, did Memphis have a zoo? And could we go to the zoo on the weekend? And she had to tell me that no, we'd have to go to the zoo in the summertime when she was out of school, because Negroes could only go to the zoo on Thursday.
Mm.
And I knew, and the point was to make me feel like I'm not good enough, you know, and that's the message they sent to Black people by doing it. Sit on the back of the bus, get off the sidewalk, you can't have a job. All of that is to subjugate us where we accept. We accepted, many of us, sitting in the balcony at movie theaters when we didn't have to go. I don't know why we were running to go anyway. It was only white people on the screen. So we've seen enough of them.
let me ask you a question. I read where they're going after the HBC schools, and so let me ask you this: do you think that America can't stand that we have professional, educated Black folks now?
So the answer to that is yes. Let me go back to the politicians, because I got off a little bit. The Black politicians should recognize that the system is structurally racist. And if they don't come in with a mindset of changing the system, then they are complicit with racism. Maynard Jackson came in as the mayor of Atlanta. He said, we're not going to do this anymore. We either gonna have equal opportunity, or we won't have this, we won't have an airport. We're gonna do something else. And so all these black politicians, when you now we got them in, we got 6 counties run by uh, black women around Atlanta. Black women of, yeah, I think 5 or 6. So they need to understand that the system that they came into was racist, inherently structured racist, and they should come in to change it. And if they don't want it, don't recognize, then they are being complicit.
Mm.
The first reaction to oppression is resistance. The second one is acknowledgement. This is where I am. How do I get out of it? But the third is acceptance, where members of the oppressed class believe that the structure is okay, is correct. And of course, the fourth reaction, elevation or de-elevation, is complicity, where members of the oppressed class are complicit with the oppressor against members of his own community.
Now let me ask you, I'm just going to talk about Georgia right now. I know we had some good and we had some bad, but in the last 2 weeks in Georgia, you didn't had 3 police chiefs, I think, that have resigned. Now they're saying either resign or get fired. You had a anchor that they say resign is going to step down tonight, Joy Reid. We're going to talk about that. We're going to definitely talk about that. And now you got another one that's stepping down today. What is really going on?
There's a lot going on, always goes on. First of all, we talked about the press earlier. The press is no longer committed to a free and independent reporting to the people. Their commercial interests are more important, I think, and that's a major problem with a democracy. A democracy needs and depends on a free press, and a free press with integrity. So, yeah, but that's not the first time. You know, that was Tiffany Cross was on MSNBC on Saturday. I wouldn't miss her.
Yeah.
And recorded it when I couldn't, when I knew I was going to be doing something different. So it's not the first time a black voice has been moved. I was in school in Atlanta when they had the first black news reporter, a guy named Lorenzo Jelks, called him Low Jelks, Clark College graduate. When he did his first reports, they never showed his face. All you heard was his voice. And so, and we progressed from that. And so there's still, the messaging is still gonna be discriminatory.
Now let me ask you. I know we what I tell people is the election is over. We're here now. They won the election. They spoke loud and clear. We were banking on the white woman to get Harris across the finish line, but the white women let us know that they didn't give a flip about us because they did what they did. So do you think
the white women didn't vote for the other white women? The white women didn't vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016 either.
Right. So let me ask you a question. Is it control at home? Do you think it's control at home?
The first book I read about oppression after I came in as an NAACP president was the oppression suffered by white women. That was the first book I read, and it surprised me. But it goes back to subjugation. It goes back to deprivation and degradation. White men imposed oppression in their own homes, and the vote is reflected by their wives and their daughters. So yeah, that oppression exists.
So let me now you see that the Hispanics voted for the president. but now you see what's going on. And it's sadly that the child have to take her life because she's scared. Do you think if they had to do that election over today, will it be a different outcome?
I have no idea. My experience with the Hispanic community is many of them have um, what's most important to them is strength, machismo, uh, and I don't think I think they looked at Trump's utterances and boast that he was a strong person.
Okay.
And the other thing I know is that many of them who came here legally and have become citizens don't have empathy for their fellow countrymen or fellow Hispanics. And remember that the Hispanic community is not homogenous. The Cubans don't like the Puerto Ricans.
Absolutely.
And the Colombians and Peruvians don't like the Mexicans and Central America. So you have all that. Just because they have a common language does not mean they have common interests or
I
common
agree.
agenda.
I agree. I lived on the West Coast, and some of my best friends is that, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I don't want to spend no time on that. I want to know what we're going to do to try to move the needle. They got some boycotts coming. Um, do you think not just black folks, but anybody that this is affecting should take a part in those boycotts?
I agree. I absolutely do. And again, I'm been in the boycott game a long time. I don't think that any person of humanity should patronize Stone Mountain because it screams racism. They got a lake named for the former Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. The message it says is N-word. The lake, Robert E. Lee Drive says N-word. It just screams. And so we should not go there. And it's, by the same token, these businesses who have said, well, we don't care about DEI. We don't care that we've been unfair in hiring, giving black folk an opportunity for advancement within our corporation. So we should tell them, no, we're going to keep our dollars in our pockets and shop elsewhere.
Right. Now I know you always talk about Stone Mountain, and I just drove through there. Never been up to that. Don't have no desire to go. But why do the black folks run up there like it's something?
I don't know. I think it's about not understanding the importance of symbolism or not internalizing the importance of symbolism. If you ride down the street in any town in the South and you see a building with a cross on top of it, you automatically assume what? That it has something to do with Christianity, right?
Right.
And so that's the message. That's the message that it sends. Well, when you ride through these Atlanta, Georgia country town, you see these Confederate soldier statues in front of the courthouse. It says the same thing. It said, "Black folk, you will not get justice here."
Hmm.
And they look alike. All those statues, it's like they had a sale on crackers. And so we're gonna put these crackers in front of the courthouse.
It's just like when the West, and you probably know about you. You ever heard of Fallbrook, California? That's where Tom Mesker lived, the KKK Grand Wizard,
Uh-huh.
and we lived out there. But I never wanted to go to Fallbrook. I didn't have no desire to spend no money on Fallbrook anything because I knew that history. And so I think when people know the history and get an understanding, I think they'll do something a little different. But
Well, you know what? We have to, two things. Remember now, the racism has been successful in America. They have deprived the black community of resources and opportunity, and they have continued a campaign of subjugation. For example, you know, they respond. I had a state representative. I met with the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus maybe eight years ago, and one of the he's a retired state representative now. His comment to me, he said, "Well," and we were talking about monuments. He said, "Well, I don't want to erase history." And I just looked at him. What does he mean, erase history? First of all, you can't erase history. You can deny it, but you can't erase it. And what does history have to do with those cracker statues in front of courthouses? It absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? And so he was looking for a way to support the status quo, and that's what we've done. We support the status. You heard black people say all the time, "Oh, I had this company do something for me. It was black, but I had to go get me a white man." Because we have bought into the subjugation. We have accepted their premise that we're not good enough. Before the Civil War started in March of 1861, the vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Hamilton Stevens, from Crawfordville, Georgia, gave a speech in Savannah. And in that speech, he was justifying the Confederacy. He said the cornerstone, he said, is that the Negro is not equal to the white man, and his rightful place is subservient to the master race. They've been trying to prove that in this continent for 400 years, and unfortunately, black folk succumbed to the constant barrage of subjugation and adopted it.
Now let me ask you this. It's funny how I see this thing play out. You know, when President Obama was the president, they wanted him to go back to Africa. He was, you know, they said he was a monkey. They said this, but now they got a real man from Africa, and ain't nobody saying a mumbling thing. So,
well, the worst part is this of this African is that he's of the same people who imprisoned Nelson Mandela for all those decades. Elon Musk is an Afrikaner. And I urge your people who are watching or listening, go look that up. That's who he is. He's an Afrikaner. They imprisoned Mandela. They were 10% of the South African population, and they ruled 90% of the other 90%, which are people were black people. And so that's what he understands life to be. Similar, you know, the work before Trump, the worst president, in my opinion, was Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson's father was an enslaver, and he fought with the Confederacy. And so that's what Woodrow Wilson learned, and when he became president, that's what he implemented. And Woodrow Wilson segregated Washington, D.C. and federal employment. If people saw the movie Hidden Figures, when Roger Henson's character had to go a half a mile to get to the restroom, it was because what Woodrow Wilson did in 1913. So these things don't change unless we change them.
Absolutely. Let us talk about Joy Reid. Tonight will be her last night. Do you think that television station did injustice to her and they couldn't control her?
I don't know the answer to that because I know as we said earlier, I know the history. And then this new woman who I understand is a black woman, they fired Tiffany Cochran. What's his name? Tiffany
Cross.
Tiffany Cross, right. And now they move Joy Reid. I don't know what the answer is. But I'm going to respond by not watching.
Yeah,
And
this
that's
is my
what I
last
want
night
people to do.
watching when she come
Yeah,
on and sign off. That's
right.
my last night.
Done. It's done. So I think that's what we have to do. And what we probably should do is go on the MSNBC website and send them a message. I urge everybody, silence gives consent. Do not consent to be mistreated.
Yeah. Now let me ask you. Let's talk about this boycott, blackout this Friday. Explain to the viewers what we need to do this Friday.
This Friday, what we need to do is keep our money in our pockets. Unless you go and do a black restaurant or buy something from a black owned business, keep your money in your pocket. Stay away from Target and McDonald's and Walmart. Walmart in particular. Is Walmart's ways are oppressive from the outset. Their employees make up a large portion of Georgians who are either on Medicaid or uninsured because they keep their hours down so they don't have to cover them. My son called Walmart the evil empire, and uh,
Mm,
and so we can start there.
yeah.
Go somewhere else or just don't go. Go stay at home. Keep your money in your pocket. That will demonstrate to America and to the occupant of the White House that we refuse to be mistreated.
Let me ask you, what do you think? Why is so many black folks that is so in love with Trump is doing? President Trump. I'm gonna respect the position.
I think they are in denial about it or they are quiet about it. Uh, Vernon Jones, you might remember him. He came on my Facebook page last week or so,
I saw it.
trying to support. But many people gave him the blues more than I did. um, so I think you will have um, people who I call complicitors like Vernon. He's going to look for a way to to support Trump, and really the way he supports it is to criticize mine and anybody else's support of Biden. I supported Biden, in 2020. We worked hard to change the trajectory of that election. Um, and it was a great thing that we did. Now America turned. It's we saw what America thinks about non-white people. We saw
Now,
that.
let me ask you because I know you probably see it uh like I see it. You have some black folk, they're down in the Democrats so bad, but they don't even open their mouth about what these napkins are doing. I know several. Every time a Democrat or a black person walk, they got something to say. Why aren't you criticizing these napkins? Because right is right and wrong is wrong. I don't care how you dice it.
Well, it's not all right and wrong. It's what they've done is accepted the oppression, and they've adopted their philosophy, and they have to continue to uphold it. I mean, because it's hard for people to say I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that, we ain't never growing up. People do anything other than say, well, I was wrong on that. They will say, well, I thought something else, and somebody told me. They put it on somebody else. They won't fess up, man up, and say, yeah, I made a mistake.
Do you think I know Bishop and I'm gonna use his name, Bishop Jamal Bryan is taking a hit. Do you think Bishop is doing what he's supposed to do?
I think he made some great statements that I agree with. Um, I think it's time for uh, leadership. I think for us all to either be in a position of leadership, activism, or get involved with the fight against this authoritarianism that's in Washington, D.C. for now. Because
Do
one
you
thing we didn't bring up was that Elon Musk is putting all these people in to oversee the government, and he got $3 billion worth of federal contract. That's a conflict of interest. I mean, he should give up one or the other.
yeah.
Give up the contracts or give up his role in government.
But don't you see that? Don't you see this is not only played out on the federal, this is played out in local government too. You already know, right?
Well, right, but that's where we have resistance. That's where we can have resistance with local government. It reminds me when Keisha Lance Bottoms was the mayor of Atlanta. You know, hackers were hacking systems across the country, across the world. And so the hackers hacked into Atlanta's system and asked for a ransom. And Keisha Bottoms said no. She said, "Where I come from, we don't acquiesce to the bullying. We're not giving them, and we're not giving them any money.
Right.
We'll have to work our way around it." That's the resolve that we have to have.
I totally agree. Do you think it should be more people from the pulpit to take a stand on this Friday?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This should be a black cotton day for commerce in America. And we should continue. Remember, the Montgomery bus boycott was not initially started as a long-term project. And it lasted over 300 days, but it was 381 days. But when they first started, it was just going to be 1 or 2 days. And then it expanded. So we can do the same thing. We have to demonstrate our resolve.
Let me ask you. I know they're gonna be going down to Bloody Sunday soon. Do you think black leaders, people that's working in the community, should change the strategy of that instead of just saying we marching across the Pettus Bridge? Do you think they should bring change down there in Selma, Alabama?
Well, I
Yep.
think I think it's a celebration. What they do in Selma is a celebration of an act of defiance that we need to continue to do that. I look at it as that. I didn't. I heard some of the civil rights leaders joke that if all the people who claimed they were on the bridge had really been on the bridge would have fallen into the Alabama River. but that was tremendous courage that we've seen demonstrated in the replay. One time, I worked with Hosea Williams when he was alive on campaigns and stuff, and so I was in Montgomery one weekend, and I decided to drive over to Selma, like 40 miles away. I said, let me just see this bridge. I was grown, out of school, and so when I got back to Atlanta, I never go straight back, but went to Hosea, and I said, Hosea, when you got to the crest of that bridge, and you looked down, you saw the troopers and the horses and dogs. What were you thinking? He said, I didn't think. He said, this was what we had decided we were going to do, and that's what we were going to do. Then he said, plus that, neither John or Noah could swim, so there was no point of jumping into the river. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. But I would tell people that haven't been down there, it's an experience. I went the last time that Congress John Lewis and went across the bridge, and it's an experience that I think everybody should do. And if you can take the kids, take them. Let me ask you this, because we're gonna be winding it down. Do you think we need to be training up the generation to take over, and do you think we're losing a generation that might not be able to carry the torch?
well, I think that what we have to do is what you can't do is change what has already happened.
That's right.
So we can start today to educate our children, and their friends and talk about these things that we didn't want to talk about before. We didn't want to talk about that. We couldn't go to the restroom downtown and Macy's and Rich's because neither one of them there anymore. But we have to remind these generations of what it was, and that we have not come far. We really have not come far. The only thing that's changed is the biggest change is public accommodation. Now we don't have to ride on the back of the bus. But voting rights suppression continues. It continues in Georgia.
Mm.
And when the symbology of Confederate monuments supports all of the things that Georgia did after the 2020 election and after the runoff on January 5th, 2021, that sent Warnock and Ossoff to the Senate. The Georgia legislature changed every method of voting that Black voters had depended on. Yeah. Oh, y'all dropping in the ballot box. Okay, no more ballot box. We come close, we shutting down the ballot. And when we do have them, they got to be behind the locked door between 9 o'clock and 5 p.m. So Black people who work long hours still couldn't vote. Yep. So they did everything. They closed polling places around. I talked to a guy from Waycross, Georgia, last week. They taken 3 polling places, polling precincts, and putting them in the same building. So essentially, they've changed the access to the vote for Waycross City voters. So that oppression continues. When you boil it down, they don't believe that Black people should be citizens equal to them. They think we should be less than them.
That's what I sum up. Let me say this, because we're gonna thank you for coming on. We're gonna close. What I'm gonna say first before I give you your closing, let you do your closing remarks. I want to say happy Black History Day. But I don't believe in Black history just in February. Black history should be every day. We should know how to treat our Black people every day, not just in February, but every day. I want to give a shout out to my 5 sisters, my mothers, my queen, not only them, but all the ones that have paved the way for me to be here, that set examples. I want to give a shout out to my son, my nephews, and all the young men around the world that is doing something, even the ones that have made mistakes, but they're trying to clean their lives up. I want to give a shout out to them also, because, all of us make mistakes. It's up to us to either move forward. And I used to tell my son when he was little, and he talks about it now. He said, Mom used to always tell me that I couldn't pause life, I couldn't rewind life, I only could move forward. And that's what I'm going to leave with whoever's watching this. We got to move forward. We got to stand united, because if we don't unite, we're going to be in some serious trouble. We already there, but you see the other side is united no matter what. It reminds me of the Jim Jones, when Jim Jones was going through that thing. So I want you guys to just think about where do you want to leave your legacy when you leave here with your children and their children, and where do we go from here? Richard Rose, I'm going to let you close out. I want to thank you for taking that last minute call. You always got a ram in the bush, and it's always, I have to say, when I pick up a call, and I'm not boasting or bragging, you have to treat folks right, and they never say no. So I want to thank you, Richard Rose.
You're quite welcome. It's been my pleasure. These are some issues that need airing, and yours is a vehicle for that, and I appreciate it. I would say we have to go back and remember. Some of us remember the 60s. I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and that's where we back now. We have to be same resolve, the same a level of consciousness, because most of us, we lost our level of consciousness. We don't understand when we being insulted or when we being discriminated against, because it's been happening so long. We've accepted the oppression. I'll say we cannot accept the oppression. We always have to get to a point of resistance and defiance. Let's roll on Friday, stay home, keep your money in your pocket. Let's demonstrate our power.
All right, well, we're gonna stay home. We're gonna cook some fish and eat salad and watch movies all day. And I got to get another show for Joe at 7 o'clock. Matter of fact, I can go down at that time. Thank you so much. Let's support Joy tonight on her last night at that news channel, and let's send them a message that we will not accept what they have done to her or anybody else. So I want to thank you, Mr. Richard Rose, for coming on. I think the producer might want to take some pictures. Stay on. She probably got them, but just stay on for a few minutes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care now.
Uh-huh.
Bye, everybody.